There tends to be this feeling in midlife that you should be further along, and that can pop up in so many different areas, whether it's your career, your fitness, maybe you own a business or want to start a business. And I'm here to tell you that it's very common to feel that way. I feel like it sometimes, it pops up every once in a while in various areas of my life. And today in this video, I'm going to talk more about how I deal with that and maybe some practical tips that you can use yourself. My personal experience with feeling behind started way back in my 20s when I dropped out of college. I was in my early 20s. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was like changing majors. And at one point I changed colleges, and I was just spending all of this money on higher education with absolutely no plan. And so I decided to drop out so that I could figure things out. And I kind of bounced around between different kind of dead end jobs. I was watching all of my friends from high school and other people my age who were really thriving. They were graduating from college, going on to get advanced degrees. They were starting to get married and have families and buy houses. And here I was just like working as a receptionist in an office, just not really sure what I wanted to do. And when I was in my late 20s, I decided to go back to college. At that point, online classes were starting to become a thing. And so I sort of dipped my toe in slightly and just started taking a few classes here and there. And then just decided to pursue a degree in something that I enjoyed that didn't necessarily mean like a career path. I've always been a writer. I've always really loved reading and poetry and literature. So I decided to get my bachelor's degree in English literature, and I ended up doing really, really well at that point. I was, I think, 29 when I graduated, so not too much later, but I did always have this sense that I was behind, even though I did so well when I went back to college. I graduated summa cum laude, which is the highest honors, and really had some extremely meaningful experiences throughout my time in college, but it did always tend to creep back in. When I started my career in educational technology, which is what I do, I work in marketing now, but I had started on as like an assistant and sort of worked my way up. And that, I think, because I felt so behind from dropping out of college, going back, graduating a little later in life, I felt like maybe I needed to catch up or prove myself. I don't know, but I was just so eager to work my way up the ranks that like every year I was applying for like the next level up, the next level up. And I kept doing that. And, I'm a good worker and I really enjoy what I do. And so I was able to do that. I was able to sort of move up the ranks. And eventually I moved from more of like the product side of things to marketing, which is what I do now, and absolutely love it. And I'm no longer feeling like I need to catch up, even though, I am a little bit older than a lot of my coworkers. I believe I'm older than my boss and, people who are at higher levels. But at this point, I don't worry about it anymore, probably because I am older and I don't really feel like I have to prove myself. And I really do enjoy what I do. And so I think that that's really key, is just sort of looking at what you have and where you're at and being grateful for it. And I am extremely grateful for the job that I have right now. I love the company I work for. I love my team and my coworkers. I really believe in the products that we sell. So, I feel like I'm in a really, really good spot. But for a long time, I didn't. And I really did feel like I needed to just keep like moving up, and that's no longer the case for me. I've also had the experience of owning different businesses throughout the years. I've always just sort of had an entrepreneurial spirit. I like to have something creative that I can work on my own terms. And I think probably the reason that most of those businesses did not work out was that I was trying to rush. I did feel like I was behind. I did feel like I needed to build things really, really quickly. And for the most part, that just was not a good plan. And it was very stressful. It just didn't work out for me. now with this brand, with my YouTube videos, with my Substack essays, building social media presence, I'm just doing it very intentionally, and it's not necessarily a business. Now, at some point, maybe I'll decide that I want to do something with that. I am a certified life coach. I'm a certified wellness coach. I have now I have an advanced degree in psychology, so I certainly could do something like that. But that's not like I'm not rushing to get there, and I may never get there. I may never want to do that. And really, I feel like at this point in my life, I have the luxury of doing that. I can decide if I want to do that or not. I have a great job. I don't need to have a business to make the money. I want to do something that is really giving back and meaningful to me. So that's really why I'm building this brand, why I'm making these weekly videos, even if a lot of people aren't watching them right now, even if I don't have a lot of followers on Instagram or TikTok. But what's really meaningful to me is when like one person will comment or message me and say, "Hey, you know what? That little video that you posted really opened my eyes to something," or "I'm going to try doing this technique that you mentioned." And that is really so meaningful to me, because it doesn't matter if I'm getting like thousands and thousands of people watching my content. If I'm making a difference just for one person, wow, like that to me, like that's the world to that one person. And so that's really what means the most to me. And so I'm not in any hurry. I would rather make this meaningful and actually make a difference, even if it's just in one or two people's lives, than try to appeal to the masses and get this like huge following. I'm just building things on my own time, very intentionally, very slowly, and really focusing on things that have made a difference for me and that I'd like to share, because I hope that it would make a difference for other people. Another thing that I struggled with for a while was feeling like I was behind in my fitness. I was never somebody who enjoyed working out. I was never somebody who, watched what I ate or wanted to exercise or any of those things. And, I can remember being, and I've told the story a million times, but I can remember being in gym class, and when they have you do like the mile run, I would walk it or I would complain or I wasn't a runner, and so running a mile was just like, it was just such a big deal. And I can remember like the drama around it when I was in high school. And now I'm paying to run marathons and half marathons and like all of these different races. So it's kind of funny to see that from that perspective. But for a really long time, I was frustrated with myself that I hadn't started my fitness journey earlier, because I didn't start working out consistently until my late 30s and into my 40s. And I often felt like, man, I could have been more muscular, or I could have been faster if I had started earlier. And that's simply just not true. And I think if you've watched some of my content over the past couple of months, I'm actually faster now because I'm doing things again. I'm building slowly. I'm, working out intentionally, making sure that every single workout has a purpose, and I'm not just like out there like doing whatever. It's made a huge difference for me. But I think that that's another really good key point, is to just push those regrets aside. I don't regret that anymore. I do sort of wish that I had started earlier, only because I know how good I feel, and I could have really felt amazing, and continued to build on that. But it's always better late than never with fitness or anything really. What I think really changed my perspective of going from like feeling like I was behind to feeling like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be was really going back to that story I just told about dropping out of college and then going back later. Again, like I felt so behind like all of the people my age, and I often just kind of felt like a loser. Like I'm just a loser. Like I never, I can't finish anything. I didn't finish college. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. All of those thoughts were like constantly repeating in my head. And once I did go back to college, and once I proved to myself that I could do the work, that I could finish, and not only finish, but finish really well. And then I went on to earn advanced degrees. I have an advanced degree in leadership, and I have a master's degree in human behavior. So looking back on that experience is something I do often because it's a really good reminder for me that I'm not behind. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I know that if I had really like toughed it out and finished college back when I really didn't feel ready, I don't think I would have done very well. And I don't think that I would have the career that I have today. So when I look back on that, it's just a really good reminder that we're all on our own time frames. There's no like set in stone rule that you go to high school and then you graduate and then you go to college and then you graduate and then you get the good job. And like, it doesn't have to be like that. And I think that's something that they're really starting to teach high school students too, is that you don't have to go to college right away if you're not ready. I mean, 18 is an adult, but it's also still really young, and a lot of young people just they don't really know what they want to do, and being able to get out into the world and explore different interests can really make a big difference. But for me, just knowing that I was able to do that and accomplish what I did on my own timeline, it's just such a good reminder for me. So I would encourage you. We all have something. We all have something that maybe we felt like we were running behind on, or that we weren't doing as quickly as we should have, and then it ended up working out. So I would encourage you to identify what that thing is for you, so that you can keep coming back to it over and over again when you feel behind, because we are not on anyone's timeline but our own. What really creates that sense of feeling behind, or that sense of urgency that you need to hurry and catch up is comparison. When you compare yourself to other people, you're comparing yourself to their timeline and their life and their circumstances. And we're all different. So when you do that, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And it's really essential to remember that you are your own person and you don't need to be like anyone else. You might have, a friend who has like the great job and the big house and all of those things. And maybe you'll get that, maybe you won't, but you don't need to try to prove yourself and bust your butt to try to get to that level. Maybe you don't even care about being at that level, but you're just seeing that there are other people who are there, and it makes you feel like, oh, maybe I should be doing something differently. And that's just not the case. So I would really encourage you to stop looking at other people's lives and comparing yourself. I do it often with fitness too. I'll see other women who are my age, maybe older, maybe younger, but typically when I see people my age who are faster runners than I am, or they can lift heavier, they're more muscular, those kinds of things, I'll start to think like, oh man, like I really wish that I could get there. I wish I had started earlier. Maybe I need to add this or that, or whatever. And all I'm doing is upsetting myself by comparing myself, my body, my health, my timeline, my circumstances to somebody else who's completely different. And that's just not serving me at all. I used to let that comparison really creep in and get to me. But now now that I know it, I can recognize it and I can kind of shut it down. Like, if I start thinking that I wish I were more like this person, or I wish I had what they had, I see that I'm doing that to myself, and I'm able to most times shut it down. And now, I don't have that sense of urgency necessarily. I take things at my own pace. I do things in a time frame that makes sense to me. And I'm not so worried about the outcome. That's why I talk about action goals so much, because often when you are focused on the outcome, you're kind of setting yourself up mentally for failure, because you're not enjoying the process as it goes. And often when you're so focused on that big goal or that big outcome and you don't achieve it, it might be because you're trying to work on a faster timeline, and then you start to feel like a failure, and then you kind of give up. You see what I'm saying? And I've done that to myself many, many times. Now I slow down, I enjoy the journey, I enjoy the process, and I focus on those action goals and those habits that are going to eventually get me to that bigger goal. Those action goals help you to shift your focus from that outcome, from future thinking to being present, being in the here and now, and just doing those daily actions that you will build into habits so that you can eventually work towards that outcome. Those action goals give you a direction. You're taking small steps. And that's how I look at it. Each action that you take is a step forward. So you're moving forward, you're not stuck. Even if you're moving slowly, you're still moving forward. And eventually that starts to build momentum and you can kind of see where that's going. And as you build momentum, it also encourages you. You're building trust in yourself, you're seeing that you're able to do it, and you just keep taking those small steps so that you are continuing to move forward. And what that also does is it really builds a sense of accomplishment. I've said this before. I like to work out in the morning, whether it's a lifting session, running session, and I work out almost every day. On my rest days, I usually take a walk, and all of those sessions help me to feel accomplished. And I love doing it in the morning because, at the very least, even if I don't do anything else for the rest of the day, I ran 3 miles or I got through a tough lower body session, something like that, that really helps me to feel like I'm propelling myself forward. It does give you a sense of accomplishment. And so, if you can set up those actions and start building them into habits, you will start to experience that feeling and you will start to feel like you're moving forward and not stuck and not behind. Action goals also bring your focus back to what you can control. So instead of asking yourself, like, am I behind? Are there other people that are much further ahead of me that I need to catch up to? You focus on what you can control. You can't control how quickly you get to a certain level. You can't control what other people are doing and how quickly they're moving ahead. You can only control that for yourself. And that's where those action goals come in, because you are, again, each time taking those actions, you're moving yourself forward. I know another thing for me was looking at other people and feeling like they were more successful than I was. And it's funny because when you think about success, it means something different to every single person. And so I might look at somebody and think they're more successful than I am, but we're all working on a different set of criteria. So for me now, success means whether I'm happy and healthy. And that's it. If I'm happy and healthy, if my family is happy and healthy, that's all I need. I don't need a certain title. I don't need to make a certain amount of money. I don't need to have a certain car, a certain house, any of that stuff. Success to me is just being happy and healthy. And I think that when you can start to look at what your own definition of success is, comparing yourself to other people looks different because their version of success is not your version of success. And so you can just kind of like put your blinders on and just focus on moving yourself forward towards the success that is meaningful to you. And shifting my mindset around this has really given me much more clarity, and it's really reduced the urgency to rush my way through life. I feel like I don't need to rush. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and just, again, putting my blinders on, working on my action goals, working on my plans, and just enjoying the process. I do see a lot of other women, whether it's my age or not, who are getting kind of caught up in this comparison game. And I think it's especially true with weight loss. I see, I'm in like a lot of fitness groups and running groups and things like that. And the questions come up all the time. How can I lose weight quickly? I saw somebody the other day asking how they can lose 30 pounds by June 1st, which is only like 2 months away. 30 pounds is a lot to lose in 2 months, but that's sort of like the mindset of a lot of people, that they want to just rush the process. And I would really encourage people to remind themselves again that we're all on our own timelines. There are also realistic timelines and unrealistic timelines. And also, looking at social media, comparing yourself to other women who are on those platforms. Again, we're all on our own timelines. We all have different circumstances, but you also have to remember that when you're looking at people on social media, You're often just seeing their highlight reel. You're seeing what they want to show you, what they have very carefully curated to put out into the world, and you're not seeing their struggles, their problems, their own circumstances. And so you're looking and thinking, oh, this person has it so easy and they're able to do this or that, but you don't really know their story. You only know your own. If you are a woman who's feeling like you're behind in life, I would first encourage you to take a look at what's causing that. Why do you feel behind? And I will guarantee that 9.5 times out of 10, it's because you're comparing yourself to someone else, or you're comparing yourself to a version of yourself that you think you should be, and not who you actually are, and where you actually are right now. And you might have some unrealistic expectations, or you might have other people that you're looking at who are in a different space than you are. So I would really encourage you to identify that, because like I said earlier, if you're able to identify that that's what you're doing, it's a lot easier to shut down. And if you're finding yourself looking on social media and it makes you feel bad about yourself, or any type of like negative feelings from looking at other people on social media, again, it's probably because you're comparing yourself and it's creating some negative feelings. So notice that as well, and maybe limit your time on social media, or if there are certain accounts that sort of trigger those feelings in you, just block them. You don't have to look at everything. And it does get easier as you start to practice this, but really, once you can notice those patterns in yourself, and notice yourself doing it, it's much easier to stop. And I'm not saying that it'll go away completely. It hasn't for me either, but it's much less frequent, and it has really changed the way that I view things, and the way that I feel about myself, and where I am in life. So once you've identified sort of where that feeling of being behind is coming from, then I would encourage you to identify one area in your life that you do want to improve. And we all have something. For me right now, it's getting to be a better athlete, being a better runner. I'm kind of in the process of learning what like how to fuel my body better so that I can perform better. And so, we're all on a learning curve. It's a learning curve for everybody. But if you can identify that area that you want to work on, then and it could be anything. It could be maybe you do want to improve your career. Maybe you want to get a promotion. So if that's something that's important to you, then there are lots of things that you can do. And that's where the action goals come in. So that's where you want to start creating a plan. And so if it were me, if I wanted to, from where I'm at right now, if I were looking to get a promotion, the first thing I would do would be talk to my manager and discuss my goals, discuss, what I want to do, why I want to do it, and ask for recommendations. I would also start sort of looking around, within the company to see if there were any other openings. I would reach out to the people who, maybe were hiring or who worked on that team, just to get a little bit more information. If I, were open to leaving the company and going someplace else, which I'm not, again, love my company, love my job, but this is just an example. If I were looking to go outside of the company to get a different job, or to, move up, then I might start researching other companies. I might start reaching out to my network, definitely update my resume. Like, these are all of the different actions that you can take. And you would just set out a plan. You would just set out an action plan of things that you would need to do. And then you would just follow it. Maybe you have a goal of improving your health. And that's something. There are so many different ways of doing that. But maybe you've never exercised before, and so you can set out an action plan where you want to be realistic. You're probably, if you've never exercised before and never made space or time for that, then going in and saying, well, I'm going to exercise for an hour 7 days a week, like, that's probably not realistic. But maybe you start with 20 or 30 minutes 3 times a week, and you can eventually build from there. But you start building that habit. Find some sort of movement that you enjoy, whether it's walking, running, cycling, lifting, yoga, Pilates. Like there's so many different options. Find something that you enjoy or that you've always wanted to try and give it several weeks of 3 times a week. And if you find that you really hate it, then you find something else. But that's really how this action goal planning works, is just identifying something that you want to improve and then taking the actions, like identifying the actions, mapping out a plan, and then following it. And that's really what builds that momentum and moves you forward. And I promise you, if you do that, that feeling of being behind will slowly start to dissipate. What I'd really like for people who are watching this video to take away is that you're not late. You're working on your own timeline. And there are probably people out there who are looking at you and saying, "Oh, I wish I could be more like that person. Or I wish I had something that you have." Again, it's all relative. We're all working within our own circumstances. And so you might feel like you're behind, but other people might be looking at you and thinking that you're way ahead of them. And when you're focused on actions and taking those actions instead of focusing on the clock or the calendar, you're going to start to build progress in a much more meaningful way, because it's really you're building like a solid foundation, and you're not just trying to like go through the motions to move forward. If this video resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you would like to continue the conversation around midlife growth, shifting mindsets, and really just thriving in our late 40s into our 50s, then please subscribe so that you can continue to get this content.